I'd like to start with an apology. I feel terribly responsible for having so many people getting up early in the morning to come here, but I want to thank you for doing it. We are facing a new reality that has many not so nice angles, but also has some advantages. One of the advantages that it has is that the problem that we faced for many years across the pharmaceutical industry, the well-known NIH syndrome, has almost disappeared since the CFOs have completed the hostile takeover of the pharmaceutical industry. And now what counts is money. And the new term, which I have just invented yesterday, is IFL, invented for less. All that counts now in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm exaggerating, but just a little bit, not too much, is money. So as long as you can do money quickly, spending less, and as long as the balance sheet looks right, then it's fine with the people who run many of the big multinational pharmaceutical companies. And that presents some advantages and some future options for the Israeli biopharma community. The most important thing for pharmaceutical companies right now, and it has been so in the past as well, is the pipeline. And I assume that everybody is familiar with the term, but essentially, just in a couple of words, pipeline. If you have a pipeline, it means that you have commercial candidates that are in various stages of development, which hopefully will replace the drugs that are going to become generic and will fill in for the loss of revenues deriving from the fact that the generic industry is going to sell those drugs damn cheap the day after the patent expires. Unfortunately, for many large companies, their pipeline doesn't look too well. And that's why we see, again, a new wave of mergers, and that's why we have seen for quite a few years now that large pharmaceutical industries are scouting for new commercial drug candidates all over the place. There are several reasons why pharmaceutical and biotechnological companies outsource drug discovery and drug development research. And this outsourcing is essentially across the board of the drug development process. It is unfortunate for us that much of it goes to India at this point, but because of the size of Israel, I think that we can improve our situation there. But essentially, again, it all goes to cost-cutting, efficiency, not setting up new facilities, not hiring new people, and making as many people as possible redundant. So much so that important people, important scientists who have contributed to the development of blockbuster drugs are made redundant constantly. And I'm not going to mention names, but if you will take the time to look up names of scientists who were hailed during the last few years for developing multi-billion drugs, and then you go and see if they're working in the company that made them multi-millions, they're probably no longer there. That's because they have become less interesting, less important to the industry. And you will not see many investments in new facilities. You will hear from many large, or you already have heard, and you will hear more from many large pharmaceutical companies that are shutting down basic drug discovery facilities, and instead they are turning to startup companies, research institutes, universities, and so on. And the outsourcing trend has become so important in the last 5 years that when I looked up the figures, I was amazed to discover that in the US only, it is estimated that $12 billion is outsourced from the US to other countries on the various stages of the drug development process, and that's big bucks. Again, if you look at what the experts say about the future of the biotech industry, you will see that the race for the pipeline is going to become more and more aggressive between the various pharmaceutical companies, and there are also, some of them at least, who seek to diversify are turning more to agrochemical and animal health. And many conventional chemistry companies are now looking at biotech as a means to improve their situation. So, although the title of this little talk this morning is Biopharma, there is life beyond biopharma, and I think the Israeli biotech industry should look at agrochemicals, biofuels, and green solutions, because that's where a lot of money, a lot of investment money is going to be put in the next few years. We need to look at what's happening to get a bird's eye view of the slowing down of the global pharmaceutical market. If you look at the figures for 2008, we are talking about $773 billion. With a growth in 2008 of global growth of 4.8%, which is expected now to slow down to anything between 2.5 and 3.5 growth. And you would say that, well, okay, it's growing, so what's so bad? But unfortunately, it's not growing because of new developments, new drugs, and new solutions. It's growing because of the emerging markets that are growing on cheap generic drugs. So that's, again, it's not good news for the ethical or for the innovative, if you want, pharmaceutical industry. This is what it looked like in 2008. The growth in North America was very slow. And the big growth you see is in Asia, Africa, Australia, and Latin America. So looking back to the last 3 or 4 years, you can see that companies that have embraced some biotech products and have moved away from being simply a chemical industry are doing better than the ones that have remained focused on chemistry. And it can be expected that that lesson will be learned also by the companies who are still focused more on chemistry, which is, again, good news for the biotech drug discovery industry. And the reason why these companies are doing better is because biotech products are, and of course there is pros and cons in that. The fact that the biotech products are more sophisticated, more difficult to develop and to copy. But even so, when you look at the figures, you see that there are on the market right now 22 biotech drugs that are making more than $1 billion a year, which is not bad. So why do multinational companies come to Israel? They come here because we have highly trained, high-level scientists that actively work in drug discovery in various institutes, research institutes, universities, startup companies, and the number of startup companies in the field is big. Obviously, this industry has been hit, like everybody else, by the recession, but it's still the numbers of startup companies in the field are still substantial, and we hear from many huge multinational companies that their interest in scouting for new drug candidates in Israel is growing all the time. I can tell you from personal experience that we talk to this industry all the time, and they are very, very interested in getting more and more input from us, much more than they did in the past. So we know that here in Israel we can do the science. The question is, how well can we do the business side of it? And I'm not an expert on the money side, but one of the prerequisites for doing good business in this field is good IP protection, and I'm going to focus on a very small point, but a very important one to me at least. Excuse me. A big problem that we see with startup companies as well as with universities and everybody else who's engaged in basic biotech research is that of overprotecting. And there are stages to this overprotection. The first stage is we do something in the lab and we realize that we have got something very big on our hands. So the next logical step is panic. We've got this big thing. What are we going to do with it? It's too huge for us, and we know that we are not going to do anything with it beyond a certain stage. It has to go to the big pharmas. They are the only ones who have the money to see this thing through somewhere. So we go and start patenting anything we think we should be patenting. And that's where we make our first mistake that very often will cause our project to go down the drain down the line. This is, I'm exaggerating just a little bit to make the point, but we have startup companies coming to us with this kind of claims. Okay, and yeah, it's not too different from the truth, right? We can tell it. So, and that's the problem. We see a little smudge somewhere, you know, and we say, okay, this is going to save the world. Yeah. Now, my ancestor, the Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, also known as a Ramchal, felt very strongly about this. I don't think about patents specifically, but what he said applies very well to this situation. And I'll let you read this by yourself. So, of course, I'm putting this a little strongly, but I think that what happens is eventually goes to support. Support is a very important thing in patent protection, because we must understand that unsupported statements and unsupported claims made in our patents, in our patent applications, look very nice on paper, but they don't hold water. And that's because patent protection has to be, in the ultimate analysis, and by ultimate analysis I mean when this is actually tested somewhere, in court, in commercial talks between a company and someone was going to buy this technology. The actual protection that you can get is as much as you give. You cannot, it's a sort of a law of thermodynamics. You cannot get more protection than what you deserve by the amount of information, amount of knowledge that you have put into your IP. And the number one mistake that startup companies make is to say, okay, well, I have this I know my science. I've seen this smudge somewhere on the gel, so I know this is going to do this and that, or I hope it does. So let's put all I think it's going to do into my patent applications. And because at the end of the day, my protection or my IP will be judged on the basis of the knowledge that I have put in, even if I manage to get a very broad claim that covers the use of something to save the world, it will either be held invalid if I manage to get it, or very, very likely I won't get what I think that I'm going to get. So you might ask, well, that's what the problem. Then I don't get it, and that's it. But unfortunately, what happens is on the way, I make statements that make my future inventions obvious. Because if I say that a particular use of something, some drug that I have discovered is this and that, and I don't have a clue, I'm just making this up because I think it's nice to have it in the claim. And then 6, 7, 8 years down the line, and after many $1 million, it turns out that my clue was right. But of course, I have to put in a lot of more knowledge than I had at the beginning. And then I try to patent this. I will find along my path many problems, because examiners will come to me and courts will come to me and say, look, you have made this, you have said 8 years ago that it is obvious that this works and this does this and that. So what if you've put a few more $1 million into it? It doesn't make it a new invention, it's an old one. So what do we have at this point is a patent application that, assuming I was lucky and got a claim that covers it, it's a very weak protection because it's not supported by any real data. And on the other hand, now I have a real data, I can get a real patent on that. And the pharmaceutical industry is very, very sophisticated and regarding IP protection, and they look at this stuff and say, okay, well, am I going to put $1 billion into getting this drug to market when I don't have any real patent protection, and the generics will be on the market the next day and enjoying my $1 billion investment? The answer is no, we're not going to do it at all. So, and again, I just wanted to address this very specific and small point because it's small, but it's has a butterfly effect on the drug discovery process, and particularly on small startup companies. So in conclusion, it is important to time your patent strategy carefully. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't cover and shouldn't try to cover broadly. You should, but you should time it in such a way that when you get to the big boys and try to sell your ideas or your drug discovery to them, they still have something to work on, and they can go and try to get their own patent protection that will be worth the money that they're supposed to spend or to invest into your development. And to do that, one should analyze the expected research and development cycle of that particular product and see when and what we are supposed to do things, and not just rush into doing everything else. And the most important thing, as I said at the beginning, don't panic when you have a good product. Thank you very much.